All right, welcome in everybody. Another Gambler's Den Sunday morning live stream, helping everybody put in their bets and last minute fantasy advice, all that kind of stuff. Ross, you are traveling this week.
Yeah.
Where the heck are you?
I am in lovely Green Bay, Wisconsin. I'm here obviously for Bears Packers later on today. It's Sunday Night Football. I got my nice brand new white hat that I'm going to wear for the game tonight. I got my Bears shirt on. So I'm excited. I've never been to Bears Packers game before. And then just to be able to do it in Lambeau for Sunday Night Football is going to be awesome. Hopefully we can bring home a W.
Yeah, I'm thinking, we can talk about that here in a bit with the picks, but at least you are going to bring that good vibe up from Chicago into Green Bay because we certainly need that. They're susceptible. And this line that we're going to talk, one of us is going to talk about it. I have no doubt. But this line is kind of ridiculous. So quick set. We're going to do this every Sunday, 10 o'clock Central. We're going to go through picks and we're going to do some prop picks with Ross. And then Erik Smith's going to come in about halfway through. We're going to do some daily fantasy. We're going to do a survivor pool between the two of us. And we're going to do general fantasy stuff, start stick questions, trade questions. You think that no one cares about your fantasy team. We care about your fantasy team. Bring your questions. We'll answer them. Bring your betting questions. We'll answer them. Right. So that's the idea. We're here to support everybody, reallocate the money from the books into our pockets, and let's stack all the virtual trophies that we can in our virtual trophy case. So last week, week 1, I was on a heater. I made 6 picks on this show, got all 6 right, including my double bet and 2 of my half bets, so it all evened out to +6. I think I said +7 on Twitter, but that was because I was counting my Thursday night bet, which I can't really do on this show. So I was +7 for the week, but it's +6 for this show. You did not fare quite as well.
Terrible.
So you, the viewer, if you're going to follow us, you either have to decide if I'm going to bring that magic to next week or if you need to fade me because I clearly already had my best week out of the gates and Ross is due. So that's kind of what you're going to have to decide here. But let's get into this thing, man. Like as always, we've got $100 chip just means that it's a double bet for us. It means that we just think this is our bet of the week. Other people call it like a lock. I think this is a little bit more realistic on what it would be in your actual betting slip. The orange chips are a standard bet, 1 unit bet, and the blue chip is a half unit bet, something we're interested in, but don't feel like it's quite worth a full bet. A lot of times over-unders for me are half bets, just because I have a feeling about it, but over-unders can be kind of tricky. So let's get into this. What's your first bet? Tell me what you're putting on it.
Let's do it. I feel like a lot of teams let me down last week in like the last couple minutes of a game, and I lost a bunch of bets, right? The Carolinas of the world, the Jacksonvilles of the world. Just a lot of fluky games last week. That Titans game was nuts with the Giants and Brian Daboll kind of going for it. So I'm going to double down on a team that I picked last week. I'm going to go back to them again, and I'm going to take the Jacksonville Jaguars +3 today. I'm going to put a $25 chip on there. Listen, this team is at home. I feel like they should have won that game last week. It was such a weird game. Dropped touchdown pass, Travis Etienne. All of a sudden, Carson Wentz gets on a little bit of a heater. Weird penalties all over the place. The Jaguars should have won that game last week. I think that they're a talented football team. I think they're super young, but I like Doug Peterson as a coach. I think they're going to be well coached. But most importantly, this is a team that's at home. It's going to be warm today in Jacksonville. And the Colts are playing without Michael Pittman, right? Their best wide receiver. Matt Ryan did not have a stellar game last week. And then they had a little bit of turmoil too. They released their kicker, Rodrigo Blankenship, last week. So the Colts are kind of reeling a little bit too. And, I think the Jacksonville Jaguars will kind of rebound here and at the very least cover that +3 spread. I think they're going to have a better performance all the way around from their skill players.
Yeah, I like that. That's interesting. I like the Colts this year, but they were not impressive week 1, and you kind of almost have to kind of say, "Hey, let's see it." But there was a lot of weird stuff that happened in that game. Went back and watched it, and it did feel like they really did dominate the game, but they weren't able to put them away. Yeah, it's at least interesting, like you say, down in the heat in Florida. I'm gonna go with another Florida team, but they are on the road against the Baltimore Ravens. You know how much I like the Ravens.
Yeah.
3.5 points though. They're gonna miss basically their entire secondary today.
Mm-hmm.
I like the weapons for Miami. I don't know that I necessarily believe in Tua as like the dude, but I
Mm-hmm.
think that this is going to be a close game. That 3.5 points makes me feel pretty good. I'm actually going to put it on the Dolphins plus 3.5. If it was 2.5, I'd probably just stay away.
Mm-hmm.
But I like the plus 3.5 because I think it's going to be a close game and I think they have a chance to win it. So if I can get that level of point spread there, I'm going to take it. And I think just given the injuries in Baltimore secondary, I feel pretty good about that bet.
Nice. I like it too. I'm going to jump over to that Steelers versus Pats game, right? And I look at that. I look at these two football teams. Mac Jones battling a little bit of a back injury. Very depleted skill position players. I think Bill Belichick is going to really want to run the football, grind it out, keep that Steelers defense on your heels a little bit. I was not impressed with that Steelers offense last week with Mitch Trubisky. They didn't get a ton of first downs. Again, another really fluky game. They had like 4 Joe Burrow turnovers, and they still weren't really able to capitalize on the situation. They ended up winning the football game in overtime, but I feel like they should have won bigger. That's because their offense didn't do anything. So I think that you have 2 decent defenses, even though TJ Watt is out, and 2 very depleted offenses that aren't very impressive. That screams under to me. I'm going to take the under at 40.5 on that football game. I'm going to put a $50 chip on there.
Nice. I like that. Yeah, that's a really low over-under number, but it does really set up as being a defensive slugfest. So
Yep.
I like that quite a bit. I'm gonna head up to I'm gonna head up to this game here with the Bucks at the Saints. So the Saints are the only team that in the South to give Tom Brady this much trouble. He's 0-4 as a Buck against the Saints, and there's a lot of injuries piling up here with the Bucks, but they're coming into New Orleans as a 2.5 point favorite. I don't like that at all. Like that to me doesn't feel right. I think there's too much just like Tom Brady's going to just dominate this division kind of talk. I think given the fact that they're banged up and they haven't really done well against this team, I'm actually going to give the advantage to the Saints here. It's a plus 2.5. It is Tom Brady, so I don't feel super confident. This to me is at least worth a splash bet. I'm going to put a blue chip on plus 2.5 for the Saints at home.
Nice. I like it. Yeah, I mean, listen, Mike Evans is hobbled right now. Chris Godwin's not playing in this football game. Julio Jones is going to warm up and see if he can play. Those skill position players are really struggling right now for the Buccaneers, in addition to the offensive line. So it makes a lot of sense to me. Like you said, that Saints team gives them tons of fits. So I like that a lot.
Where you going next?
I'm going to Dallas, right? Cooper Rush is getting a start this week, right? The Cowboys looked awful with Dak Prescott in the game most of the time last week. And now he's got an injured thumb and he is out. I was not impressed with what CeeDee Lamb did last week as kind of like that single marquee player. And I'm going to take the Bengals to really rebound from a poor performance last week. And I'm going to, even though the spread is big, -7, I still think that they can beat the Cowboys by pretty close to double digits. So I'm going to take a $50 chip and I'm going to take the Bengals -7 on the road. I think this is a get back game for Joe Burrow, for Joe Mixon, Jamar Chase. And I think that defense for the Bengals is really going to be able to tee off on a guy like Cooper Rush, who honestly really shouldn't even be a starting quarterback in the NFL. And I don't know how the Cowboys are going to be able to score points today.
I like it. I'm gonna just throw a blue chip on there because I agree with everything you said. It was one of the bets that I was going to talk about, so I'm just going to throw that up there. Let's go down to the Cardinals at the Raiders. Cardinals looked exactly like I thought they would in week 1, which is bad. I think they're going to be a bad football team, and I think they're potentially going to be a bad offense, or at least a dysfunctional offense to some extent, until they get DeAndre Hopkins back and can scheme up Hopkins. So I'm not sure that they're really going to be a competitive team. I think very highly of the AFC West. And so to me, 5.5 points, I was hoping it was going to be a smaller number because I didn't know that the books would think quite like I did, but they're on me a little bit here, but it's under a touchdown. And so I'm going to actually splash a couple bets here. I'm going to take the Raiders at -5.5. So they need to win by at least 6 points for me to win this bet. And I'm actually also going to take the over in this because I think the Raiders are going to put up a bunch of points, and then I think Kyler Murray is going to throw up some points in the end. Coming
garbage
back.
time touchdowns.
tons of points in that game
Yeah.
against the Chiefs. What's the difference?
Mhm.
You know, the Raiders defense is probably a little worse than the Chiefs defense.
Mhm.
And you know, okay, the Raiders offense isn't quite what the Chiefs offense is, but they're pretty good,
Yeah.
right? So I'm thinking, there's gonna be a lot of points in this game. Obviously, the 51.5 is a big number to begin with, but I think that they'll clear that, and I'm gonna say that they can cover that at home.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. This is the second straight week now that the Cardinals have to face an AFC West team, right? They had the Chiefs at home last week. They looked absolutely awful. I thought Pat Mahomes could have thrown for 6 touchdowns if he wanted to in that football game. On the flip side of it, I thought the Raiders left one on the table. I think a couple throws there that Derek Carr missed, and they actually could have beat the Chargers last week. The Chargers very easily could be 0-2. I don't think the Raiders go 0-2 to start their season, but I do think the Cardinals are. I think they're a disaster of a team. Their second round pick, their tight end, he's a healthy scratch right now, which is just absolutely atrocious. So I'm also going to put a blue chip on the Raiders -5.5 as well. I'm all in with you there.
Awesome. What's your next one?
All right, my next one, I don't feel confident about this one, but there's something a little bit fluky about that Jets and Browns game. How much do I trust Jacoby Brissett, right? And can Joe Flacco keep that football team in it? So I'm going to take a little bit of a little Hail Mary here. I'm only going to do a blue chip, but I think the Jets could actually cover that football game minus up at +6.5. I think they can keep it relatively competitive. I think the Jets are a bad football team. I think Robert Salah is a little bit in over his heads. But every now and then you get some of those passionate, kind of outcomes a little bit where a team does get up and ready to play. And I think coming off of last week, I think you'll get a little bit better performance from the Jets. And I don't feel great about it, but I do have a little bit of a feeling that the Jets can cover this football game, even though it's in Cleveland at +6.5.
I don't agree with you, but I'm also not going to bet against it because it's a weird one.
I don't feel good about it. It's weird.
The fact that it's 6.5 makes me kind of want to put a chip on the Browns just because I think that they're a touchdown better than them at home. But like you said, how much do you trust the battle of the backup quarterbacks? Could be weird. You're just coming down to overall roster talent, which I think the Browns have.
Yeah.
But that can also get pretty fluky here. High variance game. So to me, I was just wanting to kind of stay away from that one. Did not interest me a lot. Can we talk about the Bears?
We can.
Okay.
Please.
+10 on the road, Green Bay. I understand how you get there as a book because you're trying to attract money on both sides so that you just make money on the game regardless of what happens. I don't think the Bears are a 10-point underdog team. Like, I don't think with the way that they play that's necessarily going to happen here very often. I don't think they're going to get blown out very often. This feels like a legacy line. This feels like a we believe in Aaron Rodgers because he's Aaron Rodgers line. I don't like that. So to me, this is maybe the last time we get the Bears getting this level of disrespect on the line. And so I'm going to put a full bet on the Bears +10 because I don't see it. I don't see this team getting blown out of the water, particularly when you have early season Aaron Rodgers trying to figure out what his connection is with these different players. There's plenty of injuries up on the offensive line. I know they're deep on the offensive line, Green Bay, but you still have David Bakhtiari is not going to play. Maybe I have no idea when the next time he's going to play, but he's not going to play. That's it's certainly a downgrade from what you might think that left tackle position is going to be, even if they like that Yosh player at left tackle. He's not at Bakhtiari all-pro level. There's plenty of talent there, but these guys are all still young and figuring it out. Plus, those wide receivers are not that talented, right? Overall, like as a stock pedigree, I'm not that impressed with them either. So I think the Bears keep it close. +10 is just too big of a number.
Yeah, I agree with you. I hope so. I'm also going to put a $25 chip on there. I think +10 is too big of a number. I think that that defense is not going to allow the Bears to go down by more than like double digits. I think they're going to be able to hang in there for most of the game. I can't confidently say that the Bears will win the football game. I hope they are, but I do think that they're a better team than what Vegas thinks right now. And I completely agree with you. Complete legacy line. This is all Aaron Rodgers, but we saw an offense last week that really struggled to move the football. We're not sure what we're going to get out of Allen Lazard today. The good news is it's not raining here in Green Bay. It's a beautiful day. The field conditions should be perfect for tonight. So we should be able to see both teams at their kind of full strength, right, and see what they're due. But I expect the Bears to be able to generate a little bit of a pass rush today too, and at least make things a little uncomfortable for Aaron Rodgers all day.
I like it. You got another one?
I do. I'm going to take a $50 chip in a team that let me down last week. Carolina Panthers, man. Listen, I think the Panthers are a decent football team. I know we talked about Matt Rule being the first coach fired, but I can't believe that the Giants are actually a 2-point favorite or a 2-point better team than the Carolina Panthers. I just like the Panthers' skill players better. I like their team from top to bottom. I like their defense a lot. And I actually think that they can go into New York and scrape out of a game there. So I'm going to take the Panthers +2 against the Giants. I just think that, if the Giants don't win that game last week, this might be a little bit closer to like a -1 game or even like a pick'em game. So that -2 line, I'm going to lean towards the Panthers and grab them.
I'm going to agree with you with a blue chip. I'm going to use my last blue chip there. And then I am going to take an orange chip, a 1-bet chip. And I'm actually going to put it on the Lions. This is actually a pick'em game now. But so it's moving against the Lions. But they're at home. I think they play tough. They showed resilience last week in coming back and making that a close game. I don't believe in Washington as much of a football team. There's a prop bet here that we'll get on the next page. But I'm not impressed necessarily with the Washington football team with Carson Wentz as their quarterback. And I think that the Lions are on this like play hard trajectory, kind of like the Bears. I think they keep it close. They're at home. I believe in them enough to be able to knock off a team like Washington coming in the door.
Yeah, absolutely. Agreed.
We're about out of time on this segment. So a quick analysis. You got a double bet. You got another bet you want to throw on? I'm
going to go one last one. Okay. This is one I feel really good about. That 46.5 for the Rams Falcons game, I'm going to take the over on that one. I just think there's going to be a ton of points today. I think the Rams alone can score 25-30 points, which means that the Falcons are going to get a bunch of garbage time points as well. I'm taking the over in LA 46.5 with that one.
What's your bet?
The over on the points for the Rams and Falcons game, 46.5. 100. Big chip. Big chip.
Gotcha. I'm not gonna do a double bet this week, but I'm gonna do a single bet on that too. That was my last bet that I wanted to cover. So perfect. We're in alignment on that one. We like that one. Okay, that's what the board looks like. I'll tweet that out here in a little bit after the show, but that's what it looks like. Ross's bets are on the right hand part of it. I'm on the left, and then for over-unders, if the chip's underneath it, we're saying under. If the chip's over it, we're saying over. So trying to at least organize it a little bit that way. But that's where we're putting the bets on the board. Kind of looks like a craps table or a roulette table, I guess. We're putting it on there. So good stuff. That's what our bets are this week. Let's move on to our segment that's partnering with Prize Picks this year. So Prize Picks, again, if you're interested in this game, download the app, put in Bears as your code. They'll match your deposit 100%. I think I like their setup, slick little setup. So check it out if you haven't yet. We're picking 5 players, props, bets that we like. You can put a bet slip in up to 5, and obviously the payout's pretty big there. You can have an option where you say flex, you get a lower payout, but you're allowed to miss 1. If you would have followed that last week, Ross and I would have both cashed you in the flex bet. We got 4 out of 5 right. So I'm designating that here as a +3 for both of us, as we got 4, missed 1. So we'll go through our prop bets here. Let's start with you and Mac Jones, 210.5 passing yards.
Yeah, I mentioned earlier, I don't like both offenses in this football game. I think both defenses are superior. Both defensive coaching staffs are superior. I don't trust Trubisky or Mac Jones in this football game to put up a ton of points or passing yards. Taking the under on Mac Jones today.
You want to just handle the Trubisky one right
You
next
can
to it?
also do the under on Mitchell Trubisky as well. I do not trust either guy to put it up in the air today confidently.
Yeah, it just feels like a defensive game. There, all of the offseason reports, from our mutual friend Kyrie, who talked about the offensive struggles in New England. Obviously, we've seen plenty of the offensive, philosophy play out here in Pittsburgh as well. So it does feel like that number is already kind of low to begin with. 210 is not much, but it does feel like a defensive game. Probably a lot of runs. I like both of those. Speaking of running. Nick Chubb at 81.5. He killed his over under last week.
Yeah.
I'm going to go back to the well and I'm going to say Nick Chubb over. I just think that's how this offense is going to be built while Jacoby Brissett is the quarterback here. Again, I think Nick Chubb is the best pure runner in football. And so if I can get him with a decent number, 81's a pretty good rushing effort, but I feel like as long they're playing a not that great team, I think that they're going to be in the lead. I think that they're going to give him a lot of carries to salt away the game. To me, this is kind of a no-brainer to start the week. Take Nick Chubb in the over. And I'll do my second one here. Washington at Detroit. I'm getting an even proposition to say that Carson Wentz is going to throw one interception. Give me that. Every week that Carson Wentz has a plus or minus 0.5 interception, I might take it, right? Just because he throws interceptions so frequently. He does not take care of the football very, very well. I'm going to say Carson Wentz over half an interception is a pretty safe bet to start the week as well. So those are my first two.
Nice. I'm going back to that Pittsburgh game. I like unders in that entire game. Listen, I think Najee Harris is hurt. I think he's got an ankle injury right now. Usually guys with an ankle injury, that can linger for a couple weeks. Again, that defense with the Patriots, I like their defensive line. I like their front seven. I just think they're going to be able to bottle up Najee Harris. I'm going to take the under on that 50.5. I know that's not even a high number. I just don't think that guy's healthy right now. And he's a real grinded out runner. He's not an explosive kind of guy. I can't see him getting more than about 3 yards a clip. And eventually they might have to abandon him altogether. So I'm going to take the under on Najee Harris's yards today.
Well, you're negative so far.
I know. It gets a little better coming up.
Yeah, last week we were 9 overs and 1 under.
Yeah,
and did pretty well with that overall. So my next one's Davante Adams. Boy, did they target him last week, right? Yeah. I mean, you called it. You said that he was going to have a big game, and he absolutely did. I found this target. So it's not even catches. This is a target number. So 10.5. So Carr just needs to throw the ball at Davante Adams 11 times for you to win this one. And given the first week of what they did to target Davante Adams, given that they're going to face the Cardinals, who gave up all of the yards and all of the points to Kansas City in their week one, to me, this one felt the one that jumped out. There's a couple of them on the targets where if you go to the Cooper Kupp level, the Justin Jefferson, the Davante Adams, they're big numbers, they're double-digit numbers. But to me, given the opponent, I felt like this was the one that screamed out. I like this category targets because you don't have to. Catches are one thing, right? Where the guy has to actually convert on the ball, the quarterback has to deliver a catchable ball, all that kind of stuff. This is just targets, and so you're really saying, I think that the quarterback's going to throw this much, and this target share is this. And you can kind of, I think, back your way into a calculation here. I think that Davante Adams is safe for 11 targets in this offense, probably every week. So I'm really good with this bet. I was really happy I found it. We'll put it that way.
Completely agree. Cardinals stink.
Yeah. There's a theme to the first half of the show here.
Exactly. Listen, I'm going back to Travis Etienne this week. I think he struggled last week to find his footing. We talked about it earlier. Key drop touchdown pass, but I think he's extremely talented back. And that rush and receiving combination of 50.5, I think that's a little bit too low for me. I'm going to take the over on that. I just think that the guy is going to be able to put at least 30, 40 yards on the ground rushing and then catch another couple passes for about 20 yards as well. So he just needs to get 51 total yards today. I think is going to be a bigger focal point of the offense because I think they need his playmaking ability and I think they want him to rebound. So I'm going to take the over on that today. For 50.5, rushing and receiving yards for Travis Etienne.
Yeah, I like that yards from scrimmage bet there, right? Like
Hmm.
we're especially with a running back where you don't have to count on just the rushing yards. A
Hmm.
guy like Chubb isn't going to do much in the passing game, so you can feel good about just going to the rushing yards and feeling comfortable with that number. But you get multiple options. So if the Jags are going to have to throw to come from behind most of the game, you get all of those little dump off passes that and that can add up pretty quick. So you don't necessarily have to get the carries.
Hmm.
So I think for the type of back that the player is, it's safer to run over to that yards from scrimmage bet. So I like your thinking there. That makes a lot of sense.
Hmm.
I have to have a Bears bet,
Sure.
and so when we recorded the preview show, these bets weren't all out yet. They finally put a Darnell Mooney prop up, and this is 4 receptions for Darnell Mooney. And I think that's too low because I understand he might have some shadowing with Jair Alexander, and maybe they're going to try to take him out. But given the week 1 monsoon and how things just didn't come together for them to be able to throw the football, I think they're going to kind of have something to prove today.
Hmm.
And I think that 4 receptions for your number 1 target is just kind of disrespectful.
Hmm.
Prize picks, they'll figure it out. They'll catch up here. But I think this is kind of a gift to the bettors here because I don't think that Darnell Mooney is going to have a lot of games where he's not getting peppered with targets. I think that week 1 was an aberration because of the weather. So for me, I'm going to go over 4 receptions for Darnell Mooney.
Yeah, I like it. I completely agree. They have to get the football in his hands today if they want to even cover that 10.5 point spread, right? So they're definitely going to get targets in today. We didn't talk about Cole Kmet, but you could probably also look at Cole Kmet as a guy in that same situation this week as well.
Yeah, Cole Kmet was the one bet I lost last week, and
Yeah.
so I thought, well, do I go back to the well and do I go back and like say, hey, I'm stubborn. I'm just shifting the player over to Darnell Mooney. I think Kmet's was pretty reasonable as well. So if you wanted to look into, if you think Cole, you're worried about Jair Alexander,
Mhm.
and you think Cole Kmet might have a good game, that might be the one to look at too. But I really like Darnell to have a nice day today.
Absolutely. My last one was anybody in the NFL more embarrassed than Nathaniel Hackett last week, right? Such a botched coaching job at the end of that football game. You kind of ruined Russell Wilson's homecoming to be able to beat his old team, the Seattle Seahawks, after they booed him to start the game, which didn't make any sense to me. I think the moral of the story here is when you pay a guy over $150 million guaranteed and you trade all those first round picks to go get him, you put the football in his hands, you let him do some work. And because of that, I think Nathaniel Hackett has learned his lesson this week. I like the over on Russell Wilson's passing attempts today. I think they're really going to let Russ cook finally, and I think he's going to put the football up in the air in the neighborhood of 35 to 40 times today. I think they have to. You have to get him into a rhythm. You have to get him back right, and you have to get those receivers back right, and you have to get that kind of confidence back in the locker room that this is our guy going forward, or else you have zero chance this year in a very tough division. So I want to take Nathaniel Hackett letting Russ cook today over on the 30.5 passing attempts.
Yeah, I like it, and I like the fact that this is a team at home. It's it's September football in
Uh,
Denver where you have that advantage,
yep.
and you might as well try to run a Houston team up and down the field, and in a way, like you got embarrassed last week, like you said,
Mhm.
embarrass the team. Like come back out strong. This is your home opener. You can excuse the like, oh, it was Seattle Super Bowl and all that kind of stuff. This is like get right time.
That's
And this
right.
is the perfect opponent to get right. You got a cupcake on your schedule. You better polish it off. So
Mhm.
I'm going to go to Jalen Hurts. You know that part in Varsity Blues where Coach Bud Kilmer starts whipping Moxon with the
Yeah.
whistle, and he says, "Stick to the basics. Stick to the basics. We are a running football team."
Mhm.
Philadelphia is a running football team. Like
Mhm.
they had a great offensive performance last week, and AJ Brown had a great game and all that, but Jalen Hurts didn't throw a touchdown. I
Yep.
mean, like they all of their touchdowns were running the ball,
Mhm.
and so for me, 1.5 against a really good defense. The Vikings defense did a really nice job in week 1. I think they
Mhm.
can continue to do so,
Mhm.
and so for me, 1.5 is inviting an under
Mhm.
for Jalen Hurts passing touchdowns. I'm not saying he can't run it in. I'm not saying he can't score plenty of points against Minnesota on Monday night, but
Mhm.
I don't like him to throw 2 or 3 touchdown passes. To me, that under bet is kind of begging for it here. So That's our bets for the prize picks this week. Any final thoughts, Ross, as you get ready to go cheer the Bears in Lambeau Field?
Nope. Just I hope everybody has a great Sunday. I hope we can make some money this week. I need to get back right on the winning side of things. But in the meantime, I'm gonna get ready for some cheese curds and some spotted cow, and go Bears tonight.
Yeah, do Wisconsin right. Do us proud.
Absolutely.
We'll see some pictures on Twitter. He's
Yes,
at
sir.
Ross Reed on Twitter. I'm sure he's going to share some good stuff at the game.
Yes.
Appreciate your insight, Ross.
Thank
Have a
you
good
as
one.
always. Have a good one.
All right. We've got Erik Smith in. Erik, how you doing this morning?
I'm doing well. Let me make sure to get the T-shirt in here. It's King of the Jungle, Joe Burrow, King of the Hill theme here. So yeah, got to rock that one. So we need a win today. So trying to bring some good luck here.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I've got this this old school Bears one from this local T-shirt shop, and it's got Dicka with the deep dish riding a bear. So
wonderful.
there's plenty of goodness in that one. So we're gonna move to our our daily fantasy picks. Again, we used FanDuel again this week. Not a sponsor, but they have an easy interface for us to share this with. We did not coordinate this. We independently picked our lineups, and I laughed that the core of our lineups was the same.
Yep.
And that's fine. That happens. But this Erik's lineups on the right, my lineups on the left, and I would like to just kind of talk through how you built your lineup, and I can kind of give you some insight into what I was thinking when I built mine.
For sure. So apologies if there are any Cardinals fans out there, because the theme of the first part was bashing the Cardinals, and I'm not sure if it's going to change a whole lot, but I just really like that Arizona-Las Vegas matchup. Honestly, I thought about playing Kyler Murray as well, because in these shootout environments, if the Raiders get up big, we're going to see a lot of passing from the Cardinals, and he actually got there for you last week. I played Kyler in fantasy, and it was ugly, but he got there for daily fantasy. So I just think it's pretty clear that Davante Adams is going to be fed the ball. It basically replaced Hunter Renfro's work. He kind of disappeared last week, and I just think we expect more of that. I thought about kind of tag teaming Davante Adams and Darren Waller here for kind of a double stack with Carr, but I just really like the volume or the value on Ertz. And with all the banged up receivers for Arizona, I think he's going to get fed the ball a ton with Rondale Moore out and the other injuries they've got going on there. So yeah, that was kind of how I started this lineup. I really like the Bengals defense against Dallas and Cooper Rush, and I think Joe Mixon is a natural pairing with that. I expect, with as rough as the Bengals blocking was last week, that if they can in this game, they're going to feed Joe Mixon with, Parsons on the other side and Dallas. That's a good defense. So if they can take a little load off Burrow this week, feed Mixon, he caught a bunch of passes this week. I think that's a good pair with the Bengals defense. So after that, I really like Javonte Williams. I know people probably worry about his snap share. He still is sharing the backfield with Melvin Gordon, but he caught every ball thrown his way last week, 11 catches on 12 targets. He just looks really good. And so I love that matchup against Houston. And then the rest of the receivers, they're just kind of value plays. I considered Curtis Samuel instead of Jahan Dotson. There's some other lower priced receivers that I think are really good values, but I kind of wanted a little piece of that Washington-Detroit game, so I got a receiver on both sides because I think that's a sneaky shootout again. So, I don't know. Those receivers are really interchangeable. There's a lot of good options this week, but I feel really good about my my running back core and then kind of my Las Vegas stack here.
So I had a similar thought. The first thing I saw was, okay, I think that there's going to be a lot of points in the Arizona-Vegas game, which is reflected in the over-under, which is honestly is a pretty good place to start when you're deciding on what you want to do to build a daily fantasy team. Is like, well, what are the big over-under lines this week, right? So, if you're thinking, well, geez, the over-under line of the Patriots a Steelers game is 39.5. I really want in that. Well, you might want to check yourself, right? Because if the over/under is saying, "Hey, this is going to be a lot of points here," they're kind of telling you something. And then you kind of look at there's only one game of evidence, but if you can get good matchups, if you feel like last week was reflective of what the defense is going to do, you start to see the greens or the reds to stay away from. So there's a little bit of that might come into play, but. I decided pretty quickly that I was going to do Carr and Adams because Adams just had such a phenomenal week one. And I just think that, the Cardinals are going to get taken advantage of like this, for quite a while.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's a pretty good and safe stack. Carr did not have necessarily the best statistical game last week. He threw some picks, but I don't think that the Cardinals are going to challenge him quite like that. So that was an easy way for me to start. The Bengals defense, being as cheap as it is, I don't really understand because the Cooper Rush does not worry me at all. So that seemed like the best bargain on the table. I'm sure that a lot of people are going to play that matchup today, but I think it's one that it's there for the taking, depending on your league or depending on your contest or whatever you're working on. Mm-hmm. And then I agree with you. The Ertz was the great value. So that's how I started.
Right.
And then I went in and I found Jeff Wilson Jr. at a pretty cheap price. He's going to supposedly be the lead back, and until I'm told otherwise, I'm going to assume that that's true. And Shanahan can change at a moment's notice, but if you're the lead back in a Shanahan offense and you're playing a team that you're favored by 9 points to win, and you're a relatively cheap option in daily fantasy, Jeff Wilson Jr. seems like a heck of a value to me. So that was the next pick. And then I was feeling pretty good that I could start playing with the rest of this. Again, I always like trying to find the wide receiver bargains as well. Drake London, I had a nice first game. They're going to LA. They're probably going to be behind. I think they'll probably throw a lot. So I could see Drake London getting a lot of second half points here. So I liked him. Allen Robinson, I don't know. We want to talk about Allen Robinson for a little bit?
Yeah.
Because Robinson, to me, had a really bad week one, and he kind of took some beating on Twitter. I don't know if it was just Bears Twitter, who was like, yeah, we told you he gave up on last year. Sure looked like he gave up on this game too.
Right.
I'm gonna kind of go against the grain here and say that he's gonna come out and have a good game. They're gonna try to target him and get him into the flow to try to reverse some of that narrative that was coming out from last week's game.
Yeah, I agree with that. I considered Robinson as well. There's not much there in the passing game beyond Cooper Kupp, so it really is going to serve them well to get him involved. And I think there's a little bit of a common theme here with the Rams disappointing players, Allen Robinson, Cam Akers. They played against the Bills defense and a Bills team that might just be a buzzsaw this year. So we really have to look at these 1 week sample sizes and take it with a grain of salt. And it's going to be a much better scenario against Atlanta. And so, yeah, I agree with you. Robinson's going to get the ball. He was only targeted twice. So it's not like, they threw him the ball 10 times and he only caught 2 of them. Like, we've all seen the Twitter highlights of his routes. He was open on a few more. I do agree. I think there's upside for this game, and I could certainly see them getting him a red zone touchdown just to kind of erase last week's memory.
Yeah, there's a little bit of that goes on in the locker room where you're trying to, you know what, we need to make sure we're feeding this guy to, kind of quiet down this. We don't need this distraction. Let's get the ball in this guy's hands and, let's figure this part out. But again, you have an opponent where you're, a talent poor opponent that you're likely going to be able to get right against. Obviously Atlanta has, AJ Terrell, really good corner, but if he's not lined up on Robinson, that makes Robinson probably the live target. Given what the defense is throwing against you.
Yeah.
So with those choices, I was then able to have a lot of money left over to try to pick 2 stars. And that's basically how I backed into the 2 stars. I really like Nick Chubb. I've talked about that quite a bit. He had a great week 1. I'm doubling down here. I think that he has another good week. He's playing against the Jets. I think Cleveland probably is leading that game. Consistently. They still are playing the backup quarterback situation. I think the offense runs through him. Yeah. Again, it's a team that you're probably going to have a lead against. He's going to get a lot of carries. To me, this was a safe and high upside bet, if that makes any sense. Yeah. And then I'll take on the flex. I had all this money left over to take Jamar Chase. Yeah. Anytime you can take one of the top 3, 4, 5 wide receivers in a situation like this, you do it. So I get Chase and Adams this week in this build, plus Chubb, plus I get Carr, who I like matchups with. So to me, I really like this lineup. I said it, and I was like, I don't really need to tinker with this much. I don't feel like I need to go in and try to find different values anywhere else. I felt like I did pretty well here. I think you did a very similar build. Your star players, maybe are a little different. And I do like Amon-Ra St. Brown. Like you said, you wanted to get in on that game because you think there's going to probably be a lot of points there.
Yeah. And so, I think the common thread here is that we do have some similar players, and that probably means that they're going to be rostered a lot. So if you are in a big tournament, there's a good chance that Derek Carr, Davante Adams, Bengals defense are going to be very highly rostered. There's some pivots you could make if you kind of want to mix it up. Like for your lineup, if you wanted to pair Nick Chubb with the Browns defense, I think that makes a lot of sense. I like pairing a defense with a running back because, you kind of play out the scenario where the Browns are up big, getting turnovers. Chubb's just getting fed the rock. So I think that's kind of something you could pivot from if you thought everyone was going to have the Bengals defense. I do think you could probably pivot from Carr, just leave Adams by himself if you're worried that there are going to be too many people at that stack, and then go with a different quarterback stack, But yeah, overall, I just think there are a lot of really good receiver values this week. So I would kind of set your running backs. I always like to set defense and tight end just to see if I'm going to spend up or not. But receiver, there are a ton of options I like this week. So I don't know if you can go wrong really for some of these value plays.
It kind of feels like that's going to be the theme this year is like wide receivers. You can probably find value. You're desperately trying to find running backs that you can live with. It also feels like real fantasy, right?
Yeah.
where your running back 2 is perpetually, you're like, I feel okay about this or not.
Yeah. You could spend up though and get, Jamar Chase and like you did, Davante Adams, and that's going to separate you from a lot of different lineups. A lot of people aren't going to go that route. So it does make sense to spend up on a couple of these elite receivers because they're just a locked in 10 targets every week.
Right. Yeah. 10.5 on Prize Picks for Davante Adams. I'll take the over on that.
Yeah.
Of course, in a few hours, I might be feeling silly, but well, let's jump into Survivor Pool. So, we're going to do Survivor Pool together. We're going to do it all year. It's a little bit different because we are competing against each other. If we take 7 strikes, it doesn't matter. We're still going to try to pick through this. Yep. Unfortunately, you took a strike last week. The Colts could not get out of their own way, and they did not win the game. So, and I had to check, and that is a strike in Survivor rules. I wasn't sure if a tie was a strike, but it is. Yeah. So I feel bad. That's okay. Because I threw a curveball at you last minute that we couldn't pick the same team each week, more so for the conversation and for giving people more options than just one. But did not happen for you last week. Any angst that you want to get out at Colts Nation for taking a strike in week 1?
Yeah, there's a couple asterisks on this one. Like you said, I did want the Ravens first. I have seen some Survivor pools which count a tie as passing on, which I think is kind of wrong. But so maybe some people out there got to pass through. And then some of the other options I had behind the Ravens, I was scared about that Broncos game against Seattle. That didn't work out. I was a little worried about the Bengals against the Steelers being a divisional game. That did not work out. So it was tough after the Ravens. I think we definitely nailed the first pick, and it was scary out there after the top pick last week.
As I drop half of the stuff on my desk, very true. I'm glad that I won the coin flip or the random number generator as it was. Yeah. So that means that this week though, you get to go first. So I'll have to pick seconds. If you take my lock, my survivor, then I'll have to pivot. So who do you want to take as your survivor pick this week?
Yeah. I don't think there's as clear of a one as there was last week. There are some good options, though, some high spreads. I worry I'm getting a little too cute with this one, but I'm going to go with the Rams home against the Falcons. The Falcons are like pesky, man. They almost won last week against the Saints. They're always putting out a good effort. So it's not like this is a team that's just a complete pushover. But I just have a hard time seeing the Rams starting 0-2 here. I think they take care of business. I just think the Bills are a really good team and made the Rams look bad last week. But I expect them to win here at home. So Rams are my pick. A couple other options in the same range, but we'll probably talk about those when we get to your selection.
Yeah, I think the Rams are in the consideration set. I think that they bounce back. They had the extra couple days to get ready for, Arthur Smith coming to town and everything that's going on with that Falcons team and that weird press conference that Arthur Smith had after that game. I think that they're too good to start 0-2 and particularly drop one at home. Against the Falcons team. So this is a get right game for them. 10 points is a big spread. I don't know if I love them covering 10 points here, but I also don't feel like I am worried at all about them, in the win-loss column here. So I like that pick. It was certainly in my consideration set. It was my initial gut reaction when I filled out my own survivor pool.
Okay.
I did not actually end up with that.
Right.
So my survivor pool my pick for my survivor pools is still alive. So that's the Broncos.
Okay.
I'm going to go with the Broncos. So they get the Texans at home. I'm not convinced that they're not going to just come out and just light the world on fire. It's a September football game in Denver. There's a lot of historical juice behind that, where home games in Denver, the team that comes in just is super fatigued. I know the Texans, played, they were competitive last week, I guess, or the score was it's hard to say because it feels like they kind of it was not necessarily the Texans that kept them in that game. It was, opponent mistakes, but whatever. The game in Seattle was an embarrassment. I think that they come out, they do things the right way here against what still should be a bad Texans team. So to me, the Broncos, they're also 10-point favorites at home. So, giant spreads, you get the benefit of giant spread games that you can pick from some of these teams here early. The Broncos maybe aren't quite at the level that we think of the Rams, or maybe they're close, probably in the same tier at this point.
Yeah.
But these are teams that are both, you would consider them to be playoff competitive teams.
Yeah.
It's also an AFC West team, which we think highly of in terms of the best division in football, most likely. So I think the Broncos come out, they rebound. I think this is a pretty safe bet. I also don't necessarily love what the Broncos schedule looks like coming up. I'm not going to want to take them in AFC West games. There's no lock in AFC West games. So it's a little too early to start doing the schedule diving. That definitely comes in the middle of the year, where you start saying, like, I'm going to save this team for later, especially when we're going to play all year, right? Like, we're not going to eliminate each other here. So we're going to play all year. So there will be a little bit of schedule and strategy and all that. But to me, this is a really good week to burn the Broncos, because I'm not sure that things are going to align quite as well for them at any other point this year.
Yeah, and they were probably my second pick. Slight reservations, just kind of the stuff that the Broncos dealt with last week, if that's in their head at all. I do think Davis Mills is like maybe a decent NFL quarterback. I don't know. He's on the path of like at least keeping his team in these games and hanging around. So it's really close between them and the Rams. You could go either way. Some of the other big spreads I was a little more scared off by, like Packers against the Bears, like divisional game. A 1-0 team against an 0-1 team. Like, there's a little momentum going on there. And then for some reason, that Bills-Titans game just feels like a trap. I don't know if that spread is still as high as it is on the pool I'm looking at, but man, I know the Bills are a lot better than the Titans, but that just feels like one of those trap games where it's a 3-point game in the fourth quarter,
Well, I mean, the Titans can do that to you, where they ugly up a game and they keep it close for some unknown reason, and you look up the scoreboard, you're like, whoa, how do they have a chance to win this? Right. I think the Titans are actually going to be low-key kind of bad, and I think they're kind of rebuilding in place, and I think that they're a team that's probably going to hover around 500 if they're lucky. Honestly, that's where I think they're at. And I think the Colts win that division by default. That's what I've been saying. Yeah. I don't mind the 10-point spread for Buffalo. But my thing with Buffalo is they're a juggernaut. Save them. There's going to be a harder week. You have easier options on the table. Save Buffalo for a week where it's really difficult for you to pick between teams, and there's nothing obvious. You can always take the team that looks like it's headed. It's so early. It's hard to say this stuff, but early returns are Buffalo looks like the best team in the league. So save them for a week that's a more difficult decision where you can lean on them. So that's where I was at. I was like, you know what? I'm not going to mess with it. I'm not even going to consider them because there's other options, and I can save them down the line.
Yeah, I agree with that. And yeah, I mean, you're going to get some Jets games with them, so those would be perfect options.
Yeah, right. Yeah, there's always those, and they have to have some easy games at some point too. So I'm saving the Bills, but all right. Well, that's survivor pool stuff. It's just one of those random games that I don't know when it came into your life as like, hey, do you want to do a survivor pool? But when I started it, I did it once. I got knocked out pretty. It was like a 1 strike and out thing. I got knocked out really early, like week 7 or something. I got knocked out, and I was like, "Dang, this is really fun. Like, I want to keep doing this. And so I put together a 3 strikes and you're out survivor pool for Windy City Gridiron a few years ago. I really like it. It's fun. It's something different. There's a little bit of strategy. You're playing, it's fun to see how different people take chances or, play the percentages, and are always taking like kind of the favorite. But I find it to be one of the more fun random fantasy games. So I'm glad that we're doing this, and I think it's going to kind of be fun. We'll it'll just be interesting to see how you play this as a one-on-one game. The 1v1 basketball, very different than team basketball, right? So I'm kind of curious to see how this all plays out, but I'm excited we're doing this one.
Yeah, it shows how crazy the NFL is too, because you're picking your most confident game every week, and you see that I've already missed one. It's kind of similar to when you do like the pick'ems, where you assign the priority to your picks. I don't know if you've ever done those, like 16 points through one pick, and you go back and look at your most confident games, and you're like 2 for 2. It's just the NFL is a crazy league, and it's really eye-opening to play in these types of leagues.
Yeah, I think one year I did a confidence points that was also a spread.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
So it wasn't just like money line, it was spread. It was just insane. I mean, just at that point, I think it just became randomness. It was just like, I don't know how you can put the handicap on the spread, which, like, if you're good, you're getting 55-60%. And then putting confidence on it. It was just like, oh man, it was too much. I only did that one year. I think I pulled, I lost all the rest of my hair, I think, doing that. All right, well, let's talk fantasy stuff. So those of you that are joining us, if you have fantasy questions, again, we care about your fantasy team. So if you have any sort of gripes, if you have questions, start sit questions, obviously, are the things that most people are worried about on Sunday mornings. If you have trade question, hey, I got this trade offer. Is it garbage? Is this guy trying to rip me off? Like, put it in the chat. We'll talk about this stuff. Send it to us on Twitter beforehand. We can discuss it, whatever works for you. I'm happy to discuss your fantasy team, because everybody says no one cares about your fantasy team. I don't think that's true, because we do. We care about it. Yeah. So let's talk about general fantasy stuff. And again, if you have questions, throw them in the comments. Some fantasy news that I think is pretty relevant. We should probably talk about that Tampa Bay New Orleans game, because I talked about it with Ross early on, that New Orleans is the only team to really give the Bucs that much trouble. Brady's 0-4 against them the regular season the last 2 years. Alvin Kamara may be hurt. Those Tampa Bay linemen, the Tampa Bay wide receivers are hurt. Does that impact Tom Brady? Like, what are you seeing with the injuries in that game in particular?
Yeah, so Kamara's already been ruled out, it looks like. So we are looking at a backfield with longtime Saint backup, it feels like, Melvin Ingram. He's going to be the backup, and he's going to be the backup, and so he's dinged up too. So we need to kind of figure out how much we can trust these backups. And I'm sorry, Mark Ingram. There's too many Ingrams in the league. But Mark Ingram is playing. But he's dinged up as well and has been on the injury report. And I think Tony James Jr. is potentially in play there. But I think it's kind of a stay away for me personally. Tony Jones Jr., man, I'll get these names right. But I think it's a stay away for me personally. This Tampa Bay run defense is tough. And I just really don't trust the Saints offense in general. I know they showed some life against the Falcons last week, but I'm trying to stay away from these running backs. So I see Ingram as more of a desperation RB2 flex type play. Especially since he's dinged up. If he wasn't dinged up himself, then I think we can pencil him in pretty easily. So as far as the Saints side of the ball, the Saints side of the ball, I don't know if we can trust these running backs. So I'd be looking more to the receivers in this game. I don't know if you have any different thoughts on the running game there.
No, like you said, because he's banged up, it's tough to trust him. But I'm curious your thoughts on, it's not an injury thing, but it's an injury that may shift where the targets and where everything goes. But Taysom Hill, I mean, do we have to talk about him? If he's got the tight end designation in your league, which I think he does in Yahoo, does that make him a live player if you don't have one of those, top 5 tight ends? Are you considering picking him up if he's still sitting on waivers and throwing him in your lineup?
He's tough for me because he only played 16 snaps last week. He was hyper efficient on the touches that he did get, but I don't know. Like, it's just, you're banking on 16 snaps. He had a couple big runs. That's the reason for his stat line. But I mean, he had 1 target in the game. So I'm really hesitant to put him out there. I've got him ranked pretty low. These players can sometimes be a blind spot for me, but I just generally want to go for the volume here. The guy's on the field getting the targets. So I've got him like tight end 20 this week. I'd rather play some of the guys like Logan Thomas, who looked promising coming back from injury. He played a bunch of snaps, got 6 targets playing the Lions. Like, I'd be looking at those options before Taysom Hill, but I get it. They're going to use him around the goal line. He's a chance for a touchdown. I totally get it, but I'd like to see his snaps increase a little bit first.
Feels like a weird, I don't want to call it a cheat code. It just feels dirty. You know, like, yeah, we're going to start Taysom Hill in my tight end spot, and he's going to take snaps out of the backfield, and he's going to maybe make a throw or two, and he's going to, that's like, okay. All right. Doesn't really seem like a tight end to me, but whatever.
I get it. I mean, it can be a cheat code if this works out and he's playing quarterback. So I totally get it, but I'm hesitant to start him this week. I'll say that.
What about some of the players? Well, do you want to talk about the Tampa Bay side of things?
Yeah, I think we should. So, I mean, Chris Godwin's out. So we know that already. And they've actually ruled out Julio Jones. So that's going to leave Mike Evans. Fournette is healthy. He's playing. Well, he's a little dinged up as well. Well, everyone on Tampa Bay is hurt. They lost their left tackle, I believe, for this week. So I think Russell Gage has been on the injury report, and he's playing. And I think they are going to need him. So there's a little bit of risk here because he was missing time in practice and he didn't get used a lot last week. But like, he's kind of the number 2 now after Mike Evans. So I do think if you're desperate for a flex play, Russell Gage, you could look at him. He's probably on waivers in some leagues where he's sitting on your bench. So I would check that out. A little worried, like I said, just that he's at full health. But I still trust Brady, even with the banged up offensive line. Like, I know the Saints have been a tough matchup for him in the past, but they've lost a lot of players in their secondary from years past. And I don't know if the defense is quite as dominant as it used to be. They gave up a lot to the Falcons last week. So we'll see. Maybe Brady has a little more luck with this Saints defense.
I don't know, man. Like, at some point, the dam's got to break, right? I mean, like, it seems like everybody's injured in Tampa Bay.
That's true.
He hasn't played well against this Saints team. I don't know. I got a bad feeling about it. The Saints are 2.5 point underdogs at home. Mm-hmm. They didn't play particularly well last week, but I just have a hard time with it. It just kind of screams out to me that the Saints are going to steal one here. They're going to at least keep it close and keep the score down. So I could be wrong, but it just feels like I'm kind of staying away from the Bucs as much as possible. I don't understand what the Bucs were thinking with bringing Russian Godwin back like that. Yeah, that seemed like, of course he got hurt. It's just like he wasn't ready. Like he wasn't ready to play in a game. I don't know. I took Godwin pretty late in the draft, and I kept thinking they're going to put him on. They're going to put him on short-term IR. They're going to, they're going to rule him out. And then they played him, and I'm like, well, I'm not playing him in my lineup, but. He got hurt. It's like, that happens when you rush a player back from an injury. It's likely that they're not ready for game action. So, that was disappointing.
Yeah, and I would say, like, Rachaad White, the Tampa Bay's backup running back, for some reason isn't rostered in most leagues. I'm not exactly sure why. Fournette is already on the injury report. When he kind of got dinged up in week 1 and left the game, it was all Rachaad White. They seemed like they trust him. They were playing him on passing downs. I think Rachaad White should be rostered everywhere as a handcuff, especially when Fournette's on the injury report already. So if you're looking for someone before kickoff to just kind of, you have someone you're not playing, they've got low upside, like, I don't know what to do with this roster spot, and White's on waivers, I would stash him before this game in case something happens to Fournette.
I don't really have the luxury of open roster spots on my bench. Unfortunately, I got a lot of players that I like that I'm kind of just, keeping. I picked up that Brian Robinson for my injury. I have one injury slot. And so he's kind of sitting there. So Godwin got ruled out, and it's like, well, man, I would really like a second injury slot. I'd like 10 injury slots, to be honest with you, but that's just me. I understand that's not a lot of people don't like that. I will hoard players. I'm terrible in fantasy baseball. Like I have the patience to wait 2 months for a guy to come back from an injury. So I'm stashing guys all the time in my injury, but let's talk about maybe some bounce back candidates. Yeah, some guys that had some rough week 1. Let's start in LA. I think that buzzsaw that they went against Buffalo maybe is impacting and shading us. As a Cam Akers owner, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on what that backfield's all about. We talked about A-Rob a little bit already in the daily fantasy sections, another bounce back candidate there, but I want to talk about that backfield. if you had both Henderson and Akers, are you starting Henderson until Akers shows you that he's back to being worthy of starting, or are you, just betting that was just a 1 week thing?
I would start Darrell Henderson over Akers this week. Henderson got 82% of the snaps last week. Akers only got 18. Now, the promising thing is it's only those two running backs. Nobody else is involved here. So I'm going to start Henderson for now. But I would say for Akers managers, like I'm not going to trust him with the start yet. I'm keeping him on my bench, but I do think better things are coming. Sean McVay started to say some good things about Akers this week in practice. I would be shocked if Akers is just on the bench all season. Like we've seen Henderson get hurt in the past. Akers has been good in the past. They trusted him in the Super Bowl run. I think this was kind of like a week 1 message or something. So personally this week, like I would not be surprised to see Akers get 30% of the snaps. I wouldn't be surprised to start inching up towards 50. Like I would hold if you're an Akers manager. I don't think this is just a wasted draft pick. So keep the faith. But yeah, I'm not starting him this week, and I would prioritize Henderson pretty easily this week.
Now Ross and I during the prop bets section both took one of these players, but Darnell Mooney I took to bounce back. He's got an over-under of 4 with Prize Picks. Travis Etienne, Ross liked him to bounce back from his week 1 that wasn't very productive. These two players that you have confidence in coming back here, you feel good about throwing them out, and like I don't know what Mooney is, a wide receiver 3 slot, Etienne, a running back 2. Do you feel good about putting those guys back in your lineups after week 1 disappointments?
Yeah, I'm feeling pretty confident on Mooney, honestly. We've got him as a wide receiver 26, so he's squarely in the wide receiver 3 range. I'm willing to write it off from that weather last week. And like Ryan Heath brought up on our QB List podcast, like the encouraging thing was that Justin Fields led the league in air yards per attempt last week. So he's still throwing the ball deep. And it just happened to go to some other players, like Pettis got one, I think. And a few random players caught those deep passes, but that's Mooney's game. I would be shocked if he's not getting the deep balls from Fields going forward. So he's still throwing deep, even in, like sideways rain. I think he's going to throw deep in better weather. So, yep, feeling good about Mooney. As far as ETN, there are definitely reasons for concern. So this isn't like, everything's great. The upside is there that we thought preseason, but he did outsnap James Robinson 36-34 overall snaps. And he had an 11% target share. So he was involved in the passing game. I think that's what we're looking for from ETN. So I will say this is a tough one this week against the Colts. They were one of the tougher matchups last year against for running backs. So that kind of downgrades them a little bit into like the RB3 flex range. But I don't think you should completely panic after week 1. Like it's going to be a mixed backfield. As long as he's getting that passing game work, that's what we want. And hopefully we see a leap from Trevor Lawrence one of these weeks. I'm starting to worry if it's going to happen, but I think we're going to see better quarterback play as the year goes on.
Yeah, you hope that, again, week 1 is what it is, but as the year goes on, you see some improvement in a lot of teams. They get stuff figured out, things settle down, that kind of stuff. So it's navigating the landscape. A couple more guys that I'm curious about what you think. We talk about that Eagles game tomorrow night against the Vikings. Eagles clearly in the passing game prioritize getting the ball into AJ Brown's hands, which why wouldn't you? He's great, right? He's one of the best wide receivers in the league. Devonta Smith had a pretty good year last year, but didn't really see much in week 1. Are you worried about him? Has that hierarchy really shaken out in your mind? Still a run-dominated team, or do you think he's still got a decent enough role to be worthy of your starting lineup?
It's a little worried just as far as consistency. We were kind of hoping that with that rookie year he put up last year, he could hold off AJ Brown maybe a little bit more than he did week 1. But everything we're hearing out of Philadelphia, like Sirianni, his quotes were like, yeah, we know we need to get Devonta Smith the ball. Like things just happened in the game and he didn't get them, but we need to feed him the ball more. And it sounded very genuine. So I think he's going to be more of a boom bust kind of wide receiver 3 type, but I do think the booms are going to be really good weeks. So I'm not like, if you need to start him, I feel pretty good about it. This should be a lot of points scored in this game between Philadelphia and Minnesota. Maybe they make an adjustment to double team AJ Brown more and Smith gets loose. So I think as long as this Eagles offense is looking good, he's going to have boom weeks, and that's going to be valuable as a wide receiver 3. So we'll just have to see if the consistency gets there for like weekly wide receiver 2 kind of range for him.
So do you disagree with my prop bet pick that Jalen Hurts under 1.5 touchdowns?
No, I don't necessarily disagree with that because, like you said, this is a run-heavy team. I think they gave every running back a touchdown last week.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Hurts can steal some. I think that's a good bet because you can still get one touchdown and it pays off. So
Right.
I'm cool with that.
Anybody else that you want to talk about that maybe bounce back candidate? Anybody come to mind?
I mean, I think one I am worried about is Damien Pierce. I know a lot of people drafted him really early, late in the offseason, and he did not look well. His usage was not good week one. So I would just say if you are scared off by his week one performance, I would keep him on the bench because Rex Burkhead played like 2.5 times more snaps than him in Houston. So that was kind of the last on my list of disappointing week one plays. I would just stash him on the bench for now because we still need to see him take over Burkhead as the running back one in Houston.
All right. So let's say you were in a league where you don't feel good about your quarterback, or your quarterback suffered an injury, and you've got a stream of quarterback here early. Maybe the same thing with tight end. Seems like those are the two positions that it's every once in a while you got to pull a streamer in. Who you like for like a 1 week replacement here as you work forward? We had the quarterback position first, and then we'll talk about tight end real quick.
Yeah, so quarterback first up would be Carson Wentz. I know it's not the name that people want to hear, but he's available in a lot of leagues. So we're trying to find players who are in a lot of leagues here. Right. Obviously, if Derek Carr's there or Kirk Cousins, grab them. But Wentz plays Detroit this week. They just were in a shootout with Philadelphia. It's got a 49. Last I checked, 49 over under. And Washington, man, they're loaded with weapons. I mean, they've got Terry McLaurin, a healthy Curtis Samuel finally. Jahan Dotson looked good. Logan Thomas is coming back to health. They actually threw the ball to Antonio Gibson last week, which we've always wanted. Like, their offensive coordinator is good. He's just been saddled with Taylor Heineke and players like that. So we really saw this passing game look good last week in Washington. Maybe that was a 1 week fluke, but some of the advanced QB stats back this up too, that Wentz looked good last week. So I like I said in the daily fantasy section, I think there are going to be a lot of points in this Washington-Detroit game. So actually the other quarterback in this one too, he's available in every league. Like I just see both Wentz and Goff having to throw a lot here, some points being put up against, subpar defenses. And I think those are two quarterbacks available in almost every league that you could go to if things were really rough.
Yeah, I took the Lions in the picks section this game. I'm just kind of curious to see. I'm already kind of like, oh, man, I took the Lions today. Am I going to feel good about that in a few hours? Probably not. I just feel so low about expectations for Washington, being able to come through. But they do have good weapons. I like I love Terry McLaurin as a player. So it's like, they do have that.
Yeah. As far as Goff goes, like he was top 12 in air yards per attempt last week. So he wasn't doing complete check down stuff we're used to. So I just think they're decent options there. Obviously, like Justin Fields is only rostered 57% of Yahoo leagues. I would go for him way over those guys if he's available. And I think long-term, like Marcus Mariota is interesting because he just ran the ball a ton. I just wouldn't want to play him against the Rams this week. But that kind of rounds out our streamer section for quarterback.
Fair. What about tight ends?
So my favorite one already played, unfortunately. That was Gerald Everett. He was under 50% rostered and just got 10 or 11 targets in that Thursday night game. So was looking really good. He was a good play, and I think it worked out pretty well. But after that, there's some lower rostered players that I think are widely available that are good plays. Start out with Hayden Hurst, the Bengals tight end. Like I'm trying to find people who are available in all of your leagues. He was 1 of 10 tight ends with a 15% target share or better last week. He was on the field for 75% of the snaps. He had a really impressive catch on the sideline. Like it wasn't like he didn't contribute anything either. He looked pretty good. He was running routes when he was on the field. So I just think he's a legit part of this offense. And tight end's pretty bad so far this year. You're really just hoping for a touchdown. So I don't think chasing a touchdown in a Joe Burrow offense is the worst ever. So Hurst is my first one. I mentioned him earlier. Logan Thomas, though, he's available in tons of leagues. Came back from a serious injury and first game, 62% of the snaps, almost a 15% target share. Lions gave up a lot of points to tight ends last year. So I expect Logan Thomas's numbers to increase as he kind of gets back into game shape. Ideally, you would wait another week or two before you're putting him in your lineups. But if you're really struggling at tight end, he's been a top 5 like tight end at times in the past. So he's got the track record. So I'd feel pretty good down the line with Logan Thomas and maybe even as early as this week.
Love it. Good stuff there. I don't need to do that because I have Mark Andrews and I have Joe Burrow going. So, any final thoughts about the Bengals that you would like to leave us with before we wrap up the show? Any real football thoughts on your real favorite football team?
Yeah. Last week was rough because it's not so much about the loss because they turned the ball over 5 times, had a pick 6. Burrow was sacked a ton, and they still would have won the game if their long snapper didn't get hurt. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
right.
as far as like that, I'm not so concerned. I think they'll be fine. It just worries me that the beating that Burrow takes on a weekly basis, like this has got to change long term because he's going to get hurt. We've already seen him get hurt before. It's just not a good thing for the long term outlook of his career. So that's kind of like when we were talking about in the daily fantasy part. Like if they can, I think they're going to give the ball to Mixon a lot. Try to keep him upright. But we kind of thought that last week, and then he was dropping back like 60 times. So we will see. It worries me, but there were some PFF numbers that maybe the line wasn't as bad as it looked last week. So hopefully not playing against TJ Watt, we could probably make him look a little better. But like I said, Parsons is on the other side too. So it worries me a bit, but I really trust their defense. Their defense is playing lights out. And I think we can beat Cooper Rush.
Now, I would think so. I watched the end of that game last week, and one thing that stuck out to me that bothered me didn't get talked on the broadcast, but the broadcast doesn't always do the best job of this kind of stuff. But I'm curious as a Bengals fan if you've thought about this or if this got talked about enough because I didn't really follow up. But they decided to kick on 3rd down. And the reason why you kick on 3rd down is that if you have a bad snap, you can junk the ball and you can try again. So the fact that the holder reached up for the ball and then tried to throw it down and couldn't spin it, that holder so clearly the snapper had a bad snap. That was mistake number 1. Mistake number 2 was the holder trying to get that snap down. He's got to know that this is a bad snap. I need to just like throw an incomplete pass, or I need to dirt it. I need to do a fire drill, whatever it is that, is the appropriate response there. But he tried to get it down. Bad decision. Mistake number 3 was the kicker to try to kick the ball because he would see that, periphery. He's got to know that. He's got to just stop his kick and he's got to initiate the fire drill. So to me, it wasn't just the bad snap. It was once you made that 3rd down decision, the special teams coordinator has to say to them, hey, if it's a bad snap, don't put it down. You got another down here. This is not 4th down. You've got another down. So was that talked about at all?
It was such a crazy game that there were a lot of things that fans were bringing up about Zach Taylor's game planning, play calling, all that kind of stuff. There was a touchdown that Jamar Chase probably had that they rushed to the line to try to run the ball in from the 1-yard line earlier on that he probably was in for. And they ended up getting stuffed on that series and didn't get any points out of it. So that was a big talking point. They obviously what you talked about, yes, them kicking on 3rd down and taking the bad snap and going with it. They also punted in overtime with about 17 seconds on the clock when a tie game was kind of what they were hoping for at that point. Like overtime was running out. So there was a lot that like people were criticizing Zach Taylor for. And it's kind of a continuation from last year. I mean, there's even some play calling stuff. Like when they go under center, it's almost always a run. And when they do play action out of it, it looks bad. So there's a lot of people poking holes in Zach Taylor right now. I tend to think it'll be okay because the players like him and they play hard for him and they have Joe Burrow. But yeah, he was under fire for a lot last week, and that was one of them for sure. So I think he's generally pretty good about being like kind of admitting to mistakes and like learning from them. So that's why I am a little encouraged. He's not one of these older coaches that just like yells back at the media. So I hope he learns from this and cleans things up going forward.
No, that was I put that in my 10 thoughts on the NFL column was this like if either go for it on 3rd and try to get the 1st down, try to score a touchdown in the game because your kicking game's rough. Yeah. Or you have to drill into these guys that like, if it was a bad snap, you got another one. You just throw it away. Don't try to make this work. And the fact that you made the decision to go for it on 3rd down, there was a bad snap. The holder made a mistake. The kicker made a mistake. It was like, that's just all around bad coaching. There's some real issues there.
And I think the kicking had been so lights out. Like Evan McPherson hadn't missed a kick since like midseason last year. It feels like even in preseason, he's drilling like 60-yarders. He had a 59-yarder in this game. I think it was so locked in that as soon as the snapper went out, it was like, whoa, what do we do here? We're not used to this. So they got a new long snapper now. Let's hope that all goes well, because I can't handle kicking problems, Jeff. It's the worst part about being an NFL fan is when the kicking stuff. I don't need to tell you this, but I've seen the Bengals lose games with bad snaps on extra points. Like the Bengals have a storied history of this as well. So no more of that. Let's move on to something else.
Yeah, I'll say it's generally not the bad. It's not the snapping part that's been bad in Chicago. It's the kicking part. But I appreciate it, Erik. Appreciate the insight. Appreciate everybody for joining us. And we'll do it again next week. Good luck to everybody. Get your bets in. Set your lineups. Follow us on Twitter. Erik is at Erik Smith QBL. Head on over to the QB list. They've got a ton of really great rankings. They've got good stuff, deep dives. They've got a lot of regular features that will make you a better fantasy owner. So make sure you're checking them out. Check me out at GridironBorn on Twitter as well. Chat with me. Bear down. If those of you that are also Bears fans, and what do you call Bengal up? What's the saying?
It's just Who Day. It's just
Who Day. Yeah, that's right.
We just yell Who Day all the time.
All right. Well, Who Day as well. I'm putting some money on your Bengals tonight. So today. So let's go Bengals -7 as well.
Awesome.
So, all right. Thanks everybody. We'll see you next time.